We started this business 30 years ago. And back then, when it was just Aidan and I, it was really tough. We did what had to be done, even if that meant wearing multiple hats, late nights, or in our case, catching the overnight bus to Melbourne to save money on airfares so we could grow our business interstate. We'd get dressed in our tracksuits, have our work with us on the bus, and we'd get changed in the public toilets as we arrived. So as we celebrate over 30 years in business, we decided to take a trip down memory lane to reflect back on our journey as founders. So we're getting the overnight bus to Melbourne, just like old times. So this was our office on the way to Melbourne. We had to reduce costs wherever we could, and
we took risks. And there were some very profound decisions we made along the way that we backed ourselves on.
I mean, we were the first ones to build a data centre in Sydney. Back then, people didn't know what data centres were.
Cloud and cybersecurity. If we hadn't taken that risk, I think we would not be who we are today.
But it's not just us that made it happen. We brought on the best, brightest, smartest individuals to help us along the way.
But they'll never know about their hamburger and fries at Goulburn.
I always remember that was the best part of the trip. Burgers at the Big Merino.
But really from the beginning, for us, customer experience was the heart of what we did, and it really became our purpose.
And it does take longer than you think.
I've had this quote in my wallet since I was a uni student, and it reads, "Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent or not, nothing is more common than unsuccessful people with talent. Genius or not, unrewarded genius is almost a proverb." Our company purpose from the very beginning, from those very early bus trips, has been to make a difference in markets that are underserved and overcharged. And that's still our purpose today.
When you think about it, David, we're two Australian brothers with our personal savings have built up a business through hard work, belief that we can make a difference for our customers.
We just kept reimagining our business. Our story is one of persistence against incredible odds. And much like those early bus trips, I think our story is just beginning.
After 30 years, and here's the clicker, thank you. After 30 years, David and I decided that it was time to tell our story. And I'm delighted to have Noel invite me on the stage today. And I hope that there's just a few insights from our 30-year journey that you can take back to your work environment. And to be honest, probably even beyond that, even into your personal environment. So over the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to bring alive the things that, in my view, made us who we are today. Now, I start here because 32 years ago, 1992, for those that were in the workforce, or in my case, entering the workforce, that was the last recession. Interest rates were 17%, unemployment was double digit. Hard to fathom today. And David and Aidan decided that we would enter a market that was dominated by one player, Telecom Australia, backed by the Government of Australia. Competing against, at that point in time, what became Optus, huge resources. The sugar daddies overseas where they could telegram back home and ask for an extra million, 100 million, maybe even $1 billion to be successful. Telecom, when we started out, lawyered up, they were going to take down the competition. They had 50,000 employees. Everyone in Australia had no idea how you could deregulate a utility. Very common now, but not then. It was very much a David and Goliath journey. Now, the world for us has evolved a lot since then. But I start there. I start with that biblical story. While our story is not as epic as that journey, but it is one of belief. It is one of taking risks, challenges, and fighting a war that is completely unbalanced. And I think as I reflect back on the last 30 years, that courage, and you heard that from Noel when he compared it to some of the video games of the last few decades. Taking chances and having courage and belief. Because no matter where you are in business, whether you're starting out with your business, whether you are part of a business unit or leading a business unit, it's the belief that will get you through the tough times, and boy, were there some. I'd love to say it was all success. Absolutely not. And this is where my first lesson, my first thing that I'd love to share with you, and that is how important the power of purpose is. Because if you don't have a purpose, the risk is that you hit the first roadblock and you veer right. And if that veer right is planned and aligned with the purpose, all good. But if not, disaster. And just remember the stat, the vast bulk of businesses that start out have failed by their first anniversary. So you're up against the odds. And that same stat often applies, in fact, even often more so when you're part of a larger organisation and there might be some type of spin out that's building up through embryonic stages. So what was our purpose? And you heard it briefly in the video from David. Our purpose was around making a difference in markets that were overcharged and underserved. That has stayed with us for the last 30 years. Markets that are overcharged and underserved. I'll bring alive as we went through our 30 years how we stayed true to that purpose. Clearly the telecom industry, that's very clear. It was a monopoly. No one gets good service with a monopoly. Sadly, telecoms even today, over the last 5 years, there is a complaint to the industry ombudsman, the TAO, every 6 minutes of every hour of every day. That includes weekends, 24/7, Christmas Day, Easter, you name it. And they're the people that even know that the TAO exists. Think about how many more don't even bother. I'm sure many of you in the room, when you don't like the experience with the telco, you just change and move on. Well, one every 6 or so minutes is lodging a formal complaint with the TAO. That is a market that is underserved and overcharged. Underpinning and giving foundations to that purpose, of course, is our values. Every company has values. Some of them mean absolutely nothing. And for many companies, I would suggest that the majority of their employees have no idea what they are. It's about simplicity of those values so that everyone in the team understands them. I do believe putting that purpose and those visions into practice is crucial because I will not always be there. The founders will not always be in the room making a decision, and certainly not when you scale and grow. For us, it's about making a difference, personal accountable service, results and collaboration. Just 4. Keep it simple. Now, the reality is I've taken you a bit on the journey on the early days. I want to bring you just to who we are today, and then I'm going to wind back to how did we get there, how did we get over those last 30 years to who we are today. Now, we've been listed on the ASX since 1999. We're an ASX top 200 by capitalisation, over $2 billion of valuation. We're building data centres, hyperscalers, 42% of the Commonwealth are inside our data centres. We own everything from the land, the building, you name it. A particularly large campus out at Macquarie Park here in Sydney, as well as down in Canberra. And the work, of course, that we do with Noel and Prashant and many others is around what we do in the government space, where we have over 270 cleared engineers working on government information. If I look at this business, we've morphed from just being on the left, which is all about Macquarie Telecom, our foundations, where we started, our origins, to much more, to offering cloud, data centre capacity, as well as in government. Now, I'm going to introduce at this point the second area that I think is worth taking back to your work environment. I talked about how businesses starting out, more than half, it's around 80%, fail by their first anniversary. How do you scale up? How do you keep that founder's mentality as you grow? Typically, there's a couple of hurdles, and I'm going to measure it by head count, where founders struggle. The first is at about 30, because at 30, all of a sudden, they're not involved in every decision. There's another inflection point just under 100 heads, where now they're hiring a new layer of management, because not only are they not in every decision, but they now need to not be hiring and engaging in performance managing and all the like every single team member. Part of our magic was how we broke up the business into 4 business units. I always love this slide, so apologies, I had to throw it in. Very proud of who our customers are in government, very relevant for what we're doing here. And we're providing cybersecurity services for them every day. We're keeping, at the simplest of terms, hackers and viruses at bay from coming down their internet pipes and, of course, data leaking back out into the internet and across to foreign state actors. And that's the underpinning of what we do for the Commonwealth. Not just the Commonwealth, but also across the state governments. I'm coming back now to how do we scale. I talked about the 4 business units that we've built up. One of the languages and one of the principles that David and myself believe in and enact every day is around freedom within boundaries. Now, what do we mean by that? At the end of the day, when you're a large organisation, you need to empower people. But you need to provide some guardrails. It can't be just a complete blank sheet of paper. Particularly businesses that are founder-led, the founder has a clear role to set not just the purpose, which we've talked about, the values, but also those guardrails. And so our language that we use heavily is freedom within boundaries. Each of those 4 business units on the previous slide operates in that context. The idea is that they operate as a business, as if the leader of that business unit is a founder. But it's still underpinned by some underlying boundaries. For example, the way we recruit, the values, the principles. There's some finance requirements. There's a whole lot of governance piece. We're all part of an ASX listed company. We come together. There's certain artefacts and tribal positions that we take every day that make sure that we're still part of one business. But this is a key element. And so everyone in the business, all 550 that sit in one of those 4 business units, have the same measures. They all get measured on the same 3 metrics, no matter which business unit they're in. Are our customers happy? Are we growing? And are we making money? Everyone, from the receptionist, IT help desk, right through to the business unit lead. The profoundness of that clarity is partly why you can scale those businesses from a founder-led start. I'm going to touch on one of those measures, and this is now the 3rd principle I want to bring and share that I think is why we were able to scale the business when, to be honest, many of our competitors had struggled over those years. The art and science of world-class customer service. Now, I'm going to say everyone in this room, whether it's your business or the one you work for, will say they offer great customer service. In my telecom business unit, my telecom competitors, like Telstra, would say the same. Great customer service. Somehow, a complaint every 6 or so minutes to the TIO, but they offer great service. The question is, how do you stand out? It traverses every industry. Hotels, how do a 5-star hotel stand out for the next 5-star hotel? How does Ritz-Carlton become better than the Hilton or the Hyatt? At one level, they're all providing rooms, a check-in, a concierge, nice decor, an environment, internet, minibar. How do they stand out? This is the key. And there's a couple of components I'm going to bring alive here. I'm going to use the analogy of a cake. when we as businesses deliver to our customers, we're delivering the sponge. In our case, for example, in government, we're providing a cybersecurity service. We stand up the environment, we build it, we have it IRAP assessed. You know, it's now delivered. That is just the sponge. And the example of that, so if you're a cake shop, if you don't sell the sponge, you're not selling cakes. If I then sort of say, well, I'm now going to put icing on my cake. Now we're talking about personal accountable service. Well, let's actually engage as humans, because at the end of the day, for the vast, vast bulk of us, we buy from people we trust. People, right? More so than any other attribute. And so by adding personal accountable service to that sponge, we now are starting to provide a very good service. I use the hotel example. I'm now getting a friendly engagement when I check in, rather than just the functional engagement of here's your room key. But that is still not sufficient to stand out. The next piece is beyond the icing, is you've got to personalise it. In the example of the cake, putting a message, a personalised message on top. This is the delight. And that's the piece that we ingrain in the way we talk about service inside our business. We expect to deliver it. Yes. We expect to have humans onshore working with our customers. But those two elements will not make the customer loyal. It's going to the next stage. I'll share two examples. I'm going to use the hotel example. This one really sits me. I was at a hotel recently. This is actually back in the days that more when you used to have, particularly in the US, where you often had the ice machine on the floor, before they actually had a bit more fancier mini bars. And the example is when a hotel guest comes out of their room looking for the ice machine, and there's a maintenance person on that floor. Clearly, the guest who's coming out of their room with their ice bucket is looking for the ice machine. The sponge would be for the maintenance person to direct the customer to where the ice machine is. That's helpful, thank you. I now know where the ice machine is. The icing would be for the maintenance person who says, let me go and get the ice for you and I'll bring it back for you. The delight on top is for that maintenance person whose job is not to directly service the customer, to inquire, are you celebrating an event? Oh, you're celebrating your anniversary. And then all of a sudden, not just the bucket full of ice comes back to the room, but maybe a small gift, some strawberries, maybe a bottle of champagne, depending on the quality of the hotel. The point here is, without that delight, you're just like everyone else. And that's what we focus on in the business. I'll bring alive one of our examples. And I'm actually just going to call out, I actually see Josh, quick hands up. He's part of our business. He joined as a tier 1 engineer answering calls from our customers. Normally when things broke, there's a problem that needs to be investigated. Not necessarily a great starting point for great customer service, but I go wrong. It's a brilliant opportunity because we all know it's about the recovery more than what went wrong. In the team that Josh joined us many years ago now, they have what they call the Legends program. This is where if a team member gets 10 in a row, where the customer in the end of the survey says 10 out of 10 for delivery, and 10 of the surveys in a row, they become a legend. They get acknowledged by the team, they often even get something hanging from their from the roof in front of their desk. And then when they get to 10 sets of 10 in a year, it's the legends of the legends. And then we repeat the stories about what made them get the 10 out of 10 each time. So we all learn about different examples. We put it on the screen so that in every seat in the office, whether you're Aidan Tudehope or that tier 1 in a contact centre, you know how you are going, how your team is going, how your business is going, and how the company is going live. Not the survey at the end of the year that takes 3 months for the leadership team to work out what to do, but live. Don't forget that then translates to at-risk pay for everyone in the business, which I touched on earlier. Let me keep rolling to my last few. One of the challenges for our business is that over 30 years in technology has rapidly evolved. When we started out, certainly no iPhones. In fact, the Palm Pilot was still a year away. No Google. Amazon had started one year earlier as a bookstore. And so we've gone through many evolutions where our industry has been disrupted. The risk as you grow is, how do you continue to challenge yourself? How do you disrupt what you had just built? We call it the Noah's Ark of innovation. I am genuinely of the belief that you will not learn from your competitors in the market that you operate. Because if you're learning from them, you're not standing out. There's no David and Goliath happening. You will learn from getting yourself out of the office into another market. And so twice a year, we spend time overseas with the key leadership engineering teams, as well as an up-and-comer for development, where we explore other markets like Australia that we operate in, that we don't operate in overseas, but like Australia, and learn from them. And of course, we make sure that we go over there with a very key purpose, a very key set of questions. Because if we don't keep disrupting ourselves, we will follow the path of many of our competitors. My last input I'm going to share, and if you look at any of our marketing material, we are a challenger brand. And so we have we in many cases zig where others zag. Now please don't confuse that with we take risk everywhere. That is not the case. But people don't necessarily want the same as what they have. And I'm happy to bring this alive in the breakouts. But what we do is when we think of a certain answer or a certain business case, we try to unshackle to go, well, is that mirroring our competitor? Is there a way of unshackling ourselves? What could be? What should be? To then form a view that where they zig, we zag. Because we won't win if we look the same. We will win because we look different. People will emotionally buy into what we're offering, and they're the customers that will stay for a long time. As I look into the future, all of those principles I shared stay with us. We have to continue to evolve. We have to continue to stay true to our purpose and our vision, keeping it simple, and reminding ourselves that customer service is part of our DNA and is part of why we have been successful and why we'll continue to be. I'm going to wrap up where I started. And I started with the comment that after 30-odd years, David and myself decided to share those insights. In part, that was triggered by an individual who we had tracked for over a decade, Joseph Michelli. He's a New York Times bestseller. And we had been so fascinated by the books that he had written over the decades around customer service that when he reached out to us now, about 3 or 4 years ago, saying for the first time he wanted to write about a company that wasn't American and that wasn't a household name globally. And so this time last year, he finished putting pen to paper and he told our customer service story about how we stood out from a customer lens. And so if you're of interest to you, if you want to understand more how we did that, if you're in a role that's of interest, there's the QR code that takes you to Amazon. I did try to get some other website going, but it's the Amazon site there, and we'd be delighted to. I'd be delighted if you had the opportunity to read, and I'd love any of your insights that you take away from that book. On that note, thank you very much. Thank you, Noel, Prashant, and the team. It's been great. Hopefully I've shared some great insights you can take back to your office. Thank you.